morning. Amy Dinsmore from Parkland. We are launching the Office of Apprenticeships July 1st. So they're separating me from the CTE division as a staff position and creating a separate department under our strategic partnerships and workforce innovation division.
Amy, that's exciting news. Congratulations.
Thanks.
And will you be the person working in that division, or will that be you, or are you guys going to be hiring, or what will that look like?
Yes, I will assume the role as director of apprenticeships, and then I believe we'll be hiring a program manager shortly.
Wonderful. Glad to hear that.
So good luck with all of that, Amy. And that, not to say that it's going to be horrible, but starting new things and figuring things out and who does what and where does that look and get staff hired, those can all be stressors. But this can be a great move for Parkland. So you'll get through it. If you've got questions, let us know. We'll help you. But you know what you're doing, Amy. You've done this a while.
Thank you. Yes, I'm excited to see the college really putting a focus on workforce development. You know, we had a workforce development department many years ago, and it wasn't the right time. So renewing those efforts, I think, are going to be really exciting.
Well, and I heard a comment made yesterday. I was at the WEI symposium in East Peoria yesterday, and one of the comments made was that workforce development for the last several years has been very focused on the CTE side of things, but workforce development can also be those academic side of pieces, because we still need accountants, we still need teachers, we still need all of those degree careers. So workforce development can be broader than strictly HVAC, culinary, automotive. So and apprenticeships fit right into those spaces. Again, if you can, then it makes sense to kind of broaden that definition a little bit. But we also know that we are also bound by whatever our colleges have predetermined our lane is. So
yes, and this effort is meant to, I guess, widen those lanes. So yeah, it should be a good development.
All right, Danielle, do you want to go ahead and get started?
I think that sounds great.
All right. So welcome to the apprenticeship virtual learning community for, we're in June. I was like, I don't even know what month we're in. But we're on June 12th and the date's right there on the screen. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about the apprenticeship ecosystem, various levels, national, state, local, regional, lots of different information. So next slide. Okay, Danielle's frozen for me, but I can see everybody else moving. Danielle, are you still there?
She's frozen for me too.
Oh, good. And we just lost Danielle. Oh no, she's back. Danielle, are you back? But you're muted. It's June, it's summer. Okay, apprenticeship work group. So I think we've talked before about a work group that we have that we've tried to cover the state of Illinois, broad areas that have been doing apprenticeships for a while. This is a group that Levon Nelson and I rely on at the community college board. Because they're at colleges, we can pick their brains and go, how does this work with you? What are you guys doing with this? Who knows how to do this? Have you experienced that kind of thing? And the work group helps us with a lot of these presentations. You'll hear from many of them today. And they're listed on the screen. I can read them all, but just know that they do amazing work. And if you have questions, you are welcome to reach out to any one of them. And if you're not sure how to reach out to one of them, reach out to Levon or I, and we will gladly pass along their email. They've given us permission to. I would ask that everyone put your name and your institution in the chat so we can see who's here. And just like earlier, we had somebody new that we were like, okay, we think we know how to do this, but can you just confirm for us? The agenda today is fairly simple. Like I said, we're going to talk about the apprenticeship ecosystem, international level. I didn't mention that, national, regional, and then we're going to have time to open it up for discussions and questions. We are going to be recording the first part of this, but when we get to discussions and questions, we're probably going to stop the recording. Mostly because we know that sometimes people are hesitant because it's on a recording. They don't want to feel like they're asking a stupid question, even though there are no stupid questions in the apprenticeship space. Let's start with that. But just to let everybody be a little bit freer around discussions. And so we'll go ahead and get started into the apprenticeship ecosystem. Apprenticeships are absolutely enrollment drivers. They are completion drivers. We know those are important at colleges. They meet regional employer needs. They help grow and develop new programs. So when employers reach out and go, hey, Parkland, we need this, you can either go, oh, hey, we've already got something like that. Let's tweak it to make it fit you. Or we haven't done one of those, but let's take a look and see what we can do to see if that's an option on a way to expand and grow the college as well as meet the employer needs. But they also require partnerships and exist within a complex system. So they're not standalone pieces. You've got to have all of these. You need several parts and pieces to go with it to have them be successful. Next slide. All right. On the international level, and I don't have my notes up. So Germany.
I'm going to take it.
Oh, good. Veronica.
I've been there. I can talk about it. Good morning, you guys. Hey, we just wanted to highlight a few aspects of the German apprenticeship models. Many of you have heard us repeat over and over that we traveled there last December, and it was just really priceless to see it firsthand. But what we learned from Germany and what you can learn, I know it's a conversation at many workshops and conferences now is the European models of apprenticeship, is that they call their system the dual education system. So really what this means is that someone is doing on-the-job training and instructional training at the same time, very similar to ours. One key that I think they do really well is that they start as early as 8th grade with internships. That's not really normal here in the States, but for them, with that introduction as early as the 8th grade, they are introducing those students to different occupations and different areas of, it could be really any occupation, so that they can get an idea of maybe what they want to do. So by the time they get between 8th and 10th grade, they could complete, as many as they want. But what I think we found our average was about 5 internships. So that is something that maybe we could look at that and think that, that is something that we could add to our practice here. Speaking with the employers in Germany, I really believe that they feel that their apprentices are an investment. I think here in the States, we like to think that that's what we're doing, but I know that we are very much in a position of reactive hiring. And so we're hiring to fill holes. And although we like our folks to fit into our cultures, employers in Germany really do strive to do that. So the apprenticeship model helps them do that. And although apprenticeships can last typically the same length as ours, 2 to 3 years, and that apprentice is working with them for that period of time, at the end of that apprenticeship, they kind of have this conversation where they decide, does the apprentice like being here? Do they value that apprentice's work and want to keep them there? And then a job is offered at that point. So that investment, I think, is key to making sure that they have the culture that they want in their work site, and that they have people who want to be working for them. Something that happens there that is not here is that the employers do pay fees to the Chamber of Commerce and Industry. That is set up within the country, established in each of the states of that country. And so those fees that they pay are pretty much mandatory if they are an established business. But what those fees do is help to pay for the organization and keeping the apprenticeship program running, because the chamber does serve as the intermediary there. So where many of us are intermediaries now here, and we know what that work entails, that is what that chamber is doing. So with that fee, they are taking care of the employer and the vocational school. They're taking care of all those interactions and things with that. The other part that is interesting is that because it's the chamber's managing it, they also standardize the national testing. So there's one test for each occupation, and that test is actually administered on the same days. And coincidentally, when we were in Germany, they were administering that test. So it really is that way. It's not something they just say is happening. It really does happen that way. Here, what we're doing is we are, of course, we all are very, our programs are top notch in all of our community colleges, but they're all just slightly different as far as how to do the actual testing at each of our institutions. So there with that national testing, that's bringing up a standardization that then again, they can count on that. I think the key to all of it is just that the apprenticeships are really part of the German culture, that they've been there forever. It's not something that we can really compare with us as apples to apples. I think we do a lot of very good things here. I think that they just have the understanding that it's with they have some major stakeholders, right? So they've got the federal government there, they've got the German states, which then goes down to the chambers, they've got the private partners, the employers, the schools, and potentially unions. And then again, they've got that Chamber of Commerce that's managing everything. So they have really bought into apprenticeship as being a workforce solution throughout their entire country, where here it's a little bit disjointed. And that's all. I'm going to pass it on to Bonnie.
Okay, well, sadly, none of my lessons are learned from actually traveling to England or Australia. And I promise I won't get my fun accents out to make this presentation more interesting. But what I'm going to talk with you about are lessons that we have learned from the English and the Australians who attended the very first Apprenticeship for America Summit in March. So that is where this information is coming from for you. So first, we're going to talk about England. They have experienced quite a bit of growth in the past 15 years in the apprenticeship area in their country. Their system operates very differently, meaning that they operate outside of a top-down approach. So they, like Germany, have a lot of stakeholders involved in their system, aligned with assessment and particularly with verifying the apprenticeship programs. So making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. These stakeholders include policymakers, funding systems, and market regulators. Interestingly enough, as we were there, I was kind of drawing some comparisons to what we see coming forward from the DOL on proposed changes to apprenticeship here in the United States and what we learned from those other countries. In England, each occupation has its own single competency standard, much of like what has been proposed in the new DOL legislation. So there were a lot of questions around that. Their standards are not really rigid, and they're able to be interpreted by their intermediary and their industry partners. So that allows their assessments and their training to have some flexibility, even though the competencies are defined as a standard. The British system really believes and operates under the mindset that there's different ways to achieve the same end. So there's still freedom inside of those occupations and those competencies and how they're taught and how they're assessed. Additionally, their financial incentives are well balanced between the employers and the apprentices. So while the German system that Veronica talked about, according to Britain, is more closed financially than their system, it's almost like a voucher. The British system used to really be a grant-heavy culture until 2017. Since then, the employers have been purchasing services from intermediaries, and they really changed their mindset from that grant culture to an investment model. And it has occurred very quickly, switching over. I mean, that's only 7 years that they've made that huge change in how they finance their apprenticeships. And then lastly, their changes to the British system have really been able to create a positive feedback loop between all of the stakeholders. And there's a high quality level associated with the apprenticeship programs, which builds the currency and the credibility of their employers. So the moves that they have made over the past 15 years have made a huge difference in how apprenticeships are viewed across the country. And I feel like we're almost poised the same way here in the United States to be able to elevate apprenticeships for models outside of the trades. So sliding on over to Australia, who has also experienced growth in the apprenticeship world, I wanted to talk just a little bit about a few items that were discussed at the summit. So there has been a really large effort by the Australian government to support apprentices versus supporting industry partners. So this is I had a hard time wrapping my head around this, to be honest with you. One of the ways that they're doing this is providing cost of living support up to $10,000 each year for the apprentices. So they're allowing those students to get their training, but they're making sure that they're being paid during that training and kind of giving them stipends. One way that they're doing this is front loading their salary in the first 3 years. So they recognize that people aren't making the wage that they're going to be making at the end of their apprenticeship. So they front load the salary. So they give them 10% of their ending salary in year 1, 10% in year 2, and then 5% in year 3. So with the average age of an apprentice being 30 in Australia, the government recognized that these people are mostly supporting families and they were going to have additional financial needs outside of maybe a traditional age college student or somebody entering in the German model at a younger age. They do still have support for their industry partners. In Australia, the employer does not pay for the RTI, and they are still eligible for business incentives anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 per year. My understanding is that those are like ours in Illinois right now, mostly in the form of tax credits. Another interesting area of discussion in Australia is regarding the recruitment of the apprentices. In Australia, the intermediaries are responsible for the recruitment of the apprentices. We know that some of us do that for our business partners, but as a whole, all of their intermediaries do all of the recruiting for their apprenticeship. They also provide the RTI support to nearly 40% of the apprentices, and they serve as mentors to 10% of them. So the intermediaries, a lot like us, are wearing a lot of hats, and it looks different based upon each business partner that they have. But in the United States, what we're sort of shifting to is requiring more from our industry partners. But in Australia, the burden, so to speak, really falls to the intermediaries versus the business partner, which is interesting to me. So lastly, there is a lot more regulation around intermediaries and training providers to ensure that all parties are functioning as specified. And when I think about what's coming down from the potential DOL regulation changes, we're seeing that there will be more regulation around intermediaries and training parties, but also around the business requirements. So I see that we're starting to pick and pull pieces that are working well from other countries and trying to implement those in the United States, which brings me to what we're doing in the United States and who we have as national resources, national apprenticeship resources and partners. So I'm going to fly through these fairly quickly. First up is the Department of Labor. We all know who they are, but I'm not going to go into very much detail about what the Department of Labor does in the apprenticeship arena, because Angela is going to share a little bit more about that in another slide. But in a nutshell, they're our regulatory body for registered apprenticeships in the United States. Apprenticeships for America, or AFA, which I referenced just a couple of slides ago, is a newly formed organization that is in Washington, D.C. They are super plugged into everything that's going on in the apprenticeship world right now. They work with policymakers, funders. They're raising public awareness to try to grow registered apprenticeship programs. They share information via newsletters and email. And they did provide us with a great summit in March. I know several of us that are on this call were there. I can tell you that I highly recommend, at the least, signing up for the mailing list on their website, which is listed on the slide. And it is free to be a member of AFA. So they're a super, super place to get some information if you need it. Next is Workforce GPS. That is an online technical assistance website that helps to build the public workforce system. It was developed specifically for workforce professionals, educators like us, and business leaders, and it's sponsored by the Employment and Training Administration Department of DOL. So they do provide community learning events, a lot of webinars. I've signed up for a lot of webinars with them, particularly in the pandemic, and they offer training resources and evidence-based research. So in addition, they send out a weekly newsletter that will help us keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on in the workforce world in general. Next is JFF, or Jobs for the Future, which is an organization that seeks to drive transformation of the United States education and workforce systems to help achieve equitable economic advancement of our workforce. They do quite a bit with technical support and training throughout the country. I am less familiar with JFF than some of our city or more urban areas, but they're a great resource for us as well. Next up is the American Association for Community Colleges, or AACC. They're really the primary advocacy organization for all of the community colleges across the United States. They offer an endless amount of support, so plugging in with them for your college as a whole is a great idea. It's not just about apprenticeships. They were awarded the ABA grant in phase 1, and they work with a ton of multiple funding streams, public and private. The Metallica grants are a big piece of what they do as well. In addition, we lost our slides, but I'm just going to keep going. In addition, they offer a multitude of training opportunities, and I can personally recommend the Workforce Development Institute in January. This conference has really been an absolute game changer for me. And as an added bonus, this year it's going to be in San Diego in January. So if you need to go somewhere that will be worthwhile for you to grow professionally, I highly recommend Workforce Development Institute in January. So hopefully I'll see some of you in San Diego. Lastly, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce supports apprenticeships in several ways. Mainly, we talk about the Talent Pipeline Management, or the TPM Academy, which is their goal of TPM is really to advance employer leadership by building high-performance talent pipelines, which perfectly aligns with what we do with registered apprenticeship programs in their framework. I know several of us are already certified, and we have been able to find TPM to be a worthwhile investment for ourselves, and also raise our ability to service our industry partners outside of just apprenticeships. Our LWIA partners are also typically really involved in the TPM side. So it's a great opportunity for us to partner with all of these different national resources. Before I hand it off to Angela to discuss the Department of Labor more specifically, the next 3 slides are just kind of visuals of what you could expect. This one is the email that comes out from the AFA, lots of hyperlinks in there about what's going on throughout the country. The next slide is from Workforce GPS. So we all get that, lots of updates in there. And then lastly, the email is from JFF. So you can see that they're offering a webinar, particularly in this one, for building inclusive pathways. So I know my area needs some assistance, particularly in the DEI arena, and all of these places are helpful in helping us step up our game there. So Angela, you're up.
And like Bonnie said, she flew through those resources. These slides will be shared. We'll put them on the ICCB website. The recording will be on the ICCB website. You can go back and click through all those links. I mean, if Bonnie's super eager, she can drop all of those in the chat, or you can, but a lot of them you may already have. So, you know, just wanting to fill you guys in on that. Department of Labor layers. As Bonnie said, we all know who Department of Labor is, but there's a lot of different layers within Department DOL, often referred to. And so we just kind of wanted to address some of those things. At the US level, at the national level, Department of Labor is the agency group that oversees all of the apprenticeship work. State apprenticeship agencies are often referred to as SAAs. Illinois, it does not have, and we are not a state apprenticeship agency. State apprenticeship agencies, I know Alabama is one. So Alabama has like its own state level Office of Apprenticeship. Everybody in Alabama submits their apprenticeships to be registered through that state level. Illinois does not have one of those. So all of ours go through USDOL for approval. There's goods and bads to that. I'm not even touching that one. But Office of Apprenticeships is often what is referred to at the DOL level. It's the OA. It's where you get your apprenticeships approved. Bonnie referenced the ETA group that sponsors Workforce GPS. They're all part of Office of Apprenticeship. So sometimes you'll see the acronym USDOL ETA or USDOL OA, because we all love our acronyms. OA is just Office of Apprenticeship. The state director, I'm not sure what that is referencing. Apprenticeship training rep, ATR, is another acronym that you will hear frequently around apprenticeships. So those are just different layers within. This is a map of who are OA states, which, so Illinois is an OA state. We do go through OA, Office of Apprenticeships, to get our apprenticeships registered. And those are the light blue ones. The dark blue ones are the ones that are SAA states. So like I said, Alabama is an SAA state. So there's a pretty even split. I don't have a hard count on all of those. But there's a pretty decent split between who does which one. And I believe those are all state level determinations. The states say, yes, we're going to be an SAA, or no, we're going to stick with Office of Apprenticeship. And Illinois has just stayed with Office of Apprenticeship over the years. So if you've got questions, or if you're talking to somebody from another state, it looks like most of them around Illinois are also similar to us, OA states, but somebody in Wisconsin or Kentucky, you may talk to them about apprenticeships if you're in those areas, and they may say, oh no, we get ours approved at the state level. And they could be 100% accurate. We just function differently because we're a different state. So, next slide. All right. And I'm sorry. Take it away, Corey.
Awesome. Thank you, Angela. So going from our great country now to our great state of Illinois, just to the state director note on the previous slides. So for all of us, again, in Illinois, who we don't have the state agency, we do have a Department of Labor state rep, and her name is, correct me if I say her, I'm sure I'm going to say her last name wrong, but her name is Deborah. And then Kremens Risinger. So we could probably drop her email in. She is probably about a year and a half into her role as state director, but I think most of them folks on the call will share. She's very responsive, so I think she probably has a lot of work, but she's always responsive to all of us. And if you don't know who maybe your regional rep is, etc., I think she could probably definitely help you, but she's always willing to take questions and be helpful. So Deborah is definitely our state director and a good person to know or have accessible. All right, so I'm looking at the people in the room. I think there's probably a lot of folks. This is either a refresher, and so I think that's good. So I too will also go through a little quickly because I want us to save definitely some time for some Q&A, but also would love to hear if people have had great successes with any of the particular state level units. So, all right, so I'm going to jump off with the Illinois Workforce Innovation Board, Apprenticeship Board of Illinois. So that is a committee or a subcommittee of the IWIB. And I would say if you are looking for resources, tangible resources, toolkits, etc., this is probably one of the better places at the state level to look. So if you've exhausted or don't need things necessarily from the DOL websites, this website does have a lot of information. I've heard that it's being refreshed actually by later this week. So, so there should be even newer things out there. But this committee is really just focused on apprenticeship. I would say in addition to the resources they provide for the practitioners, they are really trying to push the agenda for apprenticeships within the state, particularly with the industries and with employers. And so they're actually in Chicago today doing a quarterly meeting, and they'll be taping a lot of individuals, employers, institutions, ambassadors to prepare a statewide marketing video for the future. So they have support in that space. They also have the apprenticeship ambassadors. So should not be confused with the DOL ambassador program, but there's the Apprentice Ambassadors for Illinois, and they're on cohort 1. And there are 10 apprentices from throughout the state who were selected through an application process, and they represent all of us, our different types of apprenticeships and industries. And they too will be here today, getting some media training. And again, some of their stories will be showcased in this marketing video as well. So new program. I don't know if I think it's annual. So I think when the blast goes out, definitely work with your employers and apprentices to apply to get your institutions represented. All right, and then the second one is DCEO. I guess if we were thinking about kind of the autonomy of government, we maybe should have put this first on this slide. But so then there are state legislative body, right? And so DCEO, particularly the Department of Employment and Training. So that's Julio Rodriguez. He's been with the DCEO for a while. This is the body that has oversight over WIOA. So the $140 million a year that the state of Illinois gets for WIOA and other programs. This is being driven out of this organization of DCEO. Clearly work pretty collaboratively with DOL, but not always, not perfectly well. But again, those two organizations work together. Again, they provide both legislative, statewide initiatives. They are usually a good source for particular funding, particularly for apprenticeships, pre-apprenticeships, and other training. So definitely check out their website, and any posts for future funding, etc., is usually spelled out pretty well on their website. And then the next, so the Illinois Innovation Network. So this is just a collaborative, effort by the state's public institutions, to drive the innovation and economic growth throughout our state. Really led by University of Illinois system, the U of I system. They're folks from the economic development team and innovation. And so here, this entity is really helping to steer experiential learning opportunities. And then obviously the apprenticeships a subcommittee. And then on the next page, of course, there is ICCB. So I think, this activity we're doing today is just a start of all the work that ICCB is doing to support and really rev up around apprenticeships for all of our institutions throughout the state. And so they will definitely always help to cheerlead, the financial aspects and generating revenues for this work. They've done some past DOL grants, for example, CAPIT. There's some pending ones for ABA2 and other funding opportunities. And then, of course, definitely apprenticeship resources, really specific to what other community colleges are doing. Again, we'll have these monthly learning communities. There's an apprenticeship listserv that looks like many folks utilize. And soon we'll have a more robust archives of materials, on the ICCB website. I think those are all my slides. Again, but I would love, once we get to Q&A, for anyone to share again, any success stories with any of those different entities. But up next is Veronica.
All right, so I'm going to talk about our regional and local partners and support systems that we have. Corey talked about the local workforce innovation area, the LWIA. Here in Illinois, they've taken every county in Illinois and grouped that into regions, and there are 22 local LWIA partners. And so each of us I'm sure we're all aware of who we're working with. And so those are the folks that have now been through DCEO. The DOL funding is now formula funded to expand apprenticeships here in Illinois. And that has now been through their application has been awarded to them. And so where some of us are still intermediaries and carrying on the apprenticeship expansion grant from 2021. We are working hand in hand with them to expand apprenticeships, and we're doing that as they've been charged with 5 goals to expand apprenticeships, which the first one is apprenticeship for Illinois strategic planning, and then system development, support and outreach, and coordinate and expand services to workforce and economic development partners, and coordinate and expand services to employers, and coordinate and expand services to the workers, the job seekers, and the intermediaries. So with that apprenticeship expansion grant funding, those are their goals. Where do we fit into all of that? I think we work with them hand in hand as we meet with employers, introduce the idea of apprenticeship. And of course, we're going to collaborate with them on instructional training that we can provide for the RTI piece of the apprenticeship. And I just think that what we've established here in our area is monthly, or I think we've actually moved now for summer to quarterly check-ins, but we do like to meet with them to make sure that we're on the same page, knowing who we're both meeting with and how that's looking, because we all know that it takes a long time to get an employer to yes for an apprenticeship. So as that's going on, we definitely want to keep each other in the loop on what's happening. Our other partners are community colleges. We're clearly working together on many things there, collaborating. This is probably the best thing that we can all do is get here, for an hour once a month, just to kind of hear about all of these things that are on these slides today, just intentional communication. And then that obviously leads to networking, where we can all reach out to other community colleges and other folks within those colleges to follow up on things that we have questions about, or ask, hey, is this what apprenticeship is all about? Whether you're at the beginning of your program or you've been in your apprenticeship program a little longer, I think sometimes we find new stuff all the way through it. So chambers of commerce, they are within each area. Like we have our McLean County Chamber of Commerce. They're going to host business after hours, and they're going to provide a lot of networking opportunities for us and employers to come together and talk about the well-being of our county. Hand in hand with that is the local and regional economic development agencies. Here in McLean County, we have the Economic Development Agency, and they provide an opportunity for some focus groups or employer groups to meet. I know we've got manufacturing and healthcare groups, and they introduce a lot of other ideas, and they're just, the leader in investing in our own community. So we really want to make sure that if they are offering employer events, that you have someone at those, so that you can again begin to introduce the idea of apprenticeship to them as a workforce strategy. And then the local apprenticeship training rep, I know we've talked about that. And so here in Illinois, we are an Office of Apprenticeship State. And so within that state, we have 3 ATRs. We've got some of you probably work with Marlene Budge, others work with Nakia Womack, and some of us work with Bruce Hallam. It just depends on where you're at within the state. That relationship with that ATR it's really priceless. At least for us, it has been. If we look at us as, me as an apprentice 4 years ago, I'm probably still in the apprenticeship program. This is much longer than a 2 or 3 year program. But Bruce is my mentor, and anytime that I have any questions about forms, documents, work process schedules, anything in Rapids, he is very helpful and just very one-on-one. And I'm sure if you're working with one of those other ATRs, that they would provide the same service to you, because they also work for, as Bruce refers to her as Miss Deb, and she has a very high level of expectations. So I know that they are all very much, they want to help us so that we do our work correctly, and so that we represent them well as well. So reach out to your ATR if you ever need anything. I think I'm passing it on. Oh, maybe just the next slide, I think just shows, Danielle, did you
put that one in, Veronica? I didn't mean to surprise you on that. This was a visual of an ecosystem at a local scale, and then who the players are at a local, state, national level, what area they represent, and then what are they contributing? So are they contributing students, placements, credentials, funding, best practices? So this was just a visual representation of something we had created in our community that I just wanted to share, kind of visually represents that local ecosystem.
I think that's a really great, I did see it. I just didn't really know what we were speaking to, but you explaining it actually goes back to my Germany slide, because again, it's an entire buy-in, right? You've got everybody working together for one outcome. Every dot represented down there is from policy to student. And I think that is where Bonnie also referenced that we're taking a lot of these ideas and through the revision of the DOL process, I think that these things are going to come together, right? We've got to have this, not just something that we're here doing at our college, but that we're doing across an area, region, and potentially even the United States, right? So that's a great graphic there, I like that. And then the next one, this is just a lot of bullet points and a lot of talking. But so additional apprenticeship partners, we had guests with us, a couple of maybe even just our last meeting for youth apprenticeships, and we can talk about pre-apprenticeships when we do youth. So we had Skills USA join us. We have adult education programs within our institutions that we can be working with their workforce employee, and we could potentially be shaping up pre-apprenticeships with those students. Then there are the state pre-apprenticeship programs, where most of us are familiar with the Highway Construction Careers Training Program. Industry-specific partners, these are a little bit more organized, and they themselves are offering events and connecting and networking opportunities for everybody, but the Illinois Manufacturing Association. They are just really trying to change the entire image of manufacturing. So if you are ever able to attend something that they are putting on, or have them come to something you're doing, I mean, they are just really changing the way it looks. IMEC is another organization that is doing the same thing. Accreditation advisory groups. So we know that everyone in the nursing apprenticeship education, that we're trying to work towards standards and making sure that everyone is moving forward in that space in the same way. And we've got for-profit sponsors. These were made very clear. It was just like, wow, right? We were right. When we were at the Apprenticeships for America conference in March, that was referenced earlier as a really great resource to use, whether you sign up for the newsletter or actually plan to attend their annual summit. They had so many people there that were for-profit sponsoring apprenticeships, that actually those of us that were there from this work group, in fact, we felt a little outnumbered. It was very eye-opening to see that it is not just the intermediaries and the grant-funded people who are out here trying to expand apprenticeships, but it is for-profit agencies or for-profit businesses that are doing that too. One of them here that we know locally is ICAT. So the German American Chamber of Commerce is there. And so they then, introduced the idea to employers. They are kind of you call it like a match.com, right? They've got an apprentice, they've got an employer, they go out and recruit the RTI depending on where it's at, and there is a fee charged for that. And so it is a substantial fee that an employer is paying for that. There are many places, companies like that. Perscolis and Coding Temple and others, I think, are just examples. And then we have the union apprenticeship programs. Here at Heartland, we partner with our union apprenticeship programs just throughout the year. We have different opportunities that we can provide them with some direct training funds. We have been able to create a really good relationship there, and feel that through our career center, we are able then to refer some of our students to them depending on what their employment desire is. If someone's taking an HVAC program and we don't have an employer right out of the gate, they may have finished that here, whether that be a certificate or a degree. But then if we can refer them to our local 99 and they can continue in an apprenticeship program there, they're getting employed and they are getting some additional training. And so that is just a really great relationship to have. And then the operational apprenticeship support, I really don't know much about either one of those. So if anyone else would like to talk to those, I'd be happy to let you go. Anybody? I think we lost some people. But all right, we'll just go on to the next slide.
Veronica, I can just add, I think these are just tools that, you know, as an intermediary or a sponsor that we can pay for that, you know, really are meant to help systematize, operationalize our work. They come at varying capabilities and at varying costs. Some are as simple as just, you know, sort of a CRM system or a way to you know, engage in communication between the employer, the apprentice, and your competencies and you as the sponsor. And then some of them are as robust as, you know, you enter information and it actually submits it into, you know, the system for the DOL and it's filling out all the forms automatically. So a lot of different sort of additional tools and partners in the space that we as intermediaries could pay for.
Thank you.
So I think this, at this point, what we wanted to do is to stop recording. So let me get there. And I think what we really wanted to do was sort of open it up to the group to ask, you know, are there additional partners